Hey, it's Coven. I'm going to be working on my beige Buick, getting ready to take it on a big ass road trip. The next couple road trips that I'm planning are going to be like 1,500 to 2,000 miles, and I want to take this car, so I've got to do a bunch of work to it just to make it absolutely bulletproof. Invested about 700 bucks in parts for the car. I pretty much went through the entire car and made a list of everything it needs. Little history on this car. I got it for free from a friend of mine. I had done some work to the car for him when he owned it. He was letting his daughter drive it and she got rear-ended. So originally I was going to buy the car when they were done using it, but then he ended up giving it to me for free after the accident. It actually looked a lot worse than this before I beat the hell out of it with the hammer. Once I got the car and started driving it, I immediately figured out that it needed a whole new front subframe. It was rusted out where it mounts to the car, which is actually pretty common on these cars in the Midwest. So I got a rust-free subframe from a 98 LeSabre from Texas that apparently only had like 52,000 miles on it. It still had rust, so I got some 1/8 inch steel, welded it all on there, super reinforced it, painted it nice, and replaced the subframe and the bushings. I've had a lot of people tell me that I'm crazy for doing that to such a cheap ass old car, and I should have just called You Pull It. I put about 14,000 miles on it now since November. I've really lucked out in the past by going way too far with some garbage. I had a 1990 Geo Prism, and like 2 months after I bought it for 500 bucks, the differential seized up like it needed a whole new transmission. So I went to You Pull It and spent 75 bucks on a transaxle, busted my ass pulling it and installing it in the car, and then I ended up putting like 75,000 miles on the car after that. One of the more serious things I'm about to do to this car is replace all the fuel and brake lines because they're all rusted out, which is going to be pretty involved. I'm going to lift the car up on ramps and jack stands, get up underneath it, yank out all the rusty old shit, spray paint the whole bottom side of the car because that's how I roll, and get that installed. And then I got a fuel filter, of course, to go with the fuel lines. I've got rubber hoses to go with the new brake lines. I've got new rear brakes, drums, shoes, hardware, new rear air shocks that I bought a while back and haven't put on yet, upper and lower intake gaskets and valve cover gaskets. This is something that every 3800 owner should do. I've also got an oxygen sensor so I can get better gas mileage, brand new iridium plugs, wires, oil change. I've got oil, ATF. I'm doing a transmission service, pan, gasket, and filter, and new fluid. I've got some Lucas for it just because it is an old 4T60 and those suck. That's really the weakest part of the whole car. And here I've got a roof rack from a Ford Escape. It actually fits perfectly. I measured the length and width, and that's eventually going to go on the car. Not really necessary for this road trip unless I decide to bring my kayak, which I probably won't because that's just going to make my gas mileage worse. And then the climate control needs some work. I got this from You Pull It. It's the module that goes under the dash and operates all of the vacuum diaphragms that open and close the dampers and the air ducts. I've also got other little things to do, like this is the power steering pressure hose. I just noticed that it was leaking, no big deal. I'm replacing the broken power antenna that got eaten by a car wash with just a regular antenna from a later 90s Buick Century. I gotta kind of massage it a little to make it fit this car, but it'll work. If you watched my last road trip video, then you probably were wondering what the hell this annoying sound was. That'll be getting fixed. Currently I own 3 Buicks. They're all Park Avenues. I have a Trans Am and a boat. I generally have anywhere from 2 to 10 vehicles. I used to have a shop. This one is a 96 Park Avenue. It's the very last Park Avenue of that particular body style. It's a base model, cloth interior. A 93 Park Avenue, basically the same car, except this one's fully loaded with leather. It's getting a whole new motor built for it. I'm actually building a motor for that one. I got that car for pretty much scrap price because the oil got contaminated from bad intake gaskets, and over a period of time there was more and more friction until finally it roasted all the rod bearings. This is my nice Buick. It's filthy right now. I'm gonna pull it out and dust it off. It hasn't been started in weeks. Got a boost gauge, I've got onboard monitoring, I got a DVD, navigation, touchscreen, all 9 speakers are Rockford Fosgate punch, and then I've got 2 JL12s in the trunk. Got HID headlights, ZZP modular pulley system. Right now I've got 3.4 on there. I've got a slightly bigger one for hotter days. ZZP 1.0 tune on the PCM. I did my own custom PCV. I've modified the air intake box, and it's got a K&N drop-in filter in it. Got stainless exhaust, high flow cat with a 3-inch downpipe. I have an alternator power mod that increases the voltage in the whole car. It's non-intercooled. Currently it has to run on 92 or better octane. I put booster in it. Eventually I'm going to get it tuned to E85. This car looks dirty even when it's clean. It's not clean right now. But the last thing I would want to do is take it on a road trip with a bunch of gravel roads and dirt. I don't even like to get it rained on. That's why it's much better to take the dirt colored 96 Buick that I don't care about as far as the cosmetics go. It's like a whole week later now. I got super busy. I'm heading to the car wash up the street. I'm gonna get as much dirt off of this thing as I can before I start working on it. That always makes life easier. Cleaned up pretty good. I'm gonna start with the antenna. Something simple and easy to get warmed up. There we have it. Somewhere I have an antenna to screw onto it. If I can't find that, I'll just buy one somewhere. So here's what we're working with here. Parts of the brake lines have been replaced. Just partial repairs. Same with the fuel lines. This here is the most expensive thing I bought. These 3 fuel lines were almost 190 bucks. Rocks stuck in there. Yeah, I'd say it was time. There's all the old fuel and brake lines from the whole car. Well, that's everything. All the old crusty stuff. So far I have the bottom of the car painted, cleaned up, all the old shit removed, and I have the new fuel lines on. This has already taken way too long because everybody wants to stop and fucking talk my ear off for half an hour. The perks of living in an apartment complex and not having a real shop. These brake lines aren't what I ordered. They fit the car, but they're not the kit that I needed. This does the front of the car, everything from the master cylinder to the ABS to the front 2 wheels. So I'm gonna install it anyway, and now I need to go get a roll of 3/16 brake line and make the rears myself, which is way more time consuming. Just got back from AutoZone trying to get a roll of 3/16 brake line. The kid working there had no idea what I was talking about. Kept trying to ask me what vehicle it's for and shit. So it's like 8 p.m. it's 8:15 on a Sunday. So that's it for the brake lines for today. So I'm gonna just work on what I can. I'm gonna do the rear brakes, the drums and all that, and then maybe if I have enough energy left, I'll do these shocks. We have two of the same exact part number here, but they're completely different. They're the same hose, they'll both fit, but one has brass fittings, one has aluminum, one has like a split loom plastic shield on it. This one's got like a shrink wrap on it. It's 10 o'clock at night now. I've been working on this thing for 12 hours. It has no brake lines to the rear, and the fuel lines aren't hooked up to the fuel rails on the motor, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to push it off these ramps and push it into that parking spot right there and go take a shower. The next day, I got what I need to make my own brake lines. I'm going to start by finishing the rear brakes and do the rear shocks first. Goal for today is to finish all the brake lines, do the rear shocks and brakes and stuff, and maybe get the transmission service done. Basically all the laying down under the car kind of stuff. I don't know if I'm going to get around to doing the intake gaskets and top end stuff today. We'll see. shocks are done. Everything in the back is done. Shocks, brakes, lines. Now we're doing the front. Gonna replace these brake lines, brake hoses. Look at that shit. Fucking salt. Got the front brakes almost done here. After 2 days, I'm finally done with all of the brake and fuel lines under the whole car. That shiny new goodness. It's like 4 days later now. I got busy again. I'm about to do the transmission service, the power steering pressure hose, and my friend's coming over to help me bleed the brakes. We're in a heat wave again. It's like 96 right now, and humidity is 69%. Brakes are all bled. Now I'm gonna do the transmission service and the power steering pressure hose, and then I'm gonna put the wheels on and call it a night. Definitely seen worse. It's not that bad. I mean, yeah, it's a little burnt. There's some shavings. But I think this is the first time it's ever been open since '96. Or at least since the dealership warranty period was up. Got it all cleaned up now. Whenever I do these GM front wheel drive transmissions, 4T60 and 4T65s, I always get the wicks. They just seem to shift the best with this filter for some reason. And then also, I always get the kit with the rubber gasket, and if you get the Wix one, and a couple other brands do it too, but they make the bolt holes in the gasket small enough where it captures the bolt, and it makes putting the pan on a hell of a lot easier. Looks like at least a gallon came out of there. It's pretty much a full pan. So I'm just gonna throw a gallon in it to start with. So it's a little more than a gallon. I just took this thing on like a 10-mile test drive. It's shifting like way better. This thing is shifting really good. It's like a new car. And the brakes are awesome. The rear end's kind of stiff now because of the new shocks. Should probably do the front struts too, but I'm not gonna. It needs an alignment for sure. So the hardest part is done now. I still have to do the intake gaskets and tune up and all that, and then I'm gonna do the fun stuff like put that roof rack on it and kind of clean the thing up, detail it a little bit, and get it set up to go on a road trip. I'm taking the day off though, I'm wore out. So we're in this heat advisory through tomorrow. I've decided to split this video into 2 parts. It's getting kind of long, and I still have a lot of stuff to do to that car. A lot of more fun, interesting stuff. So I'll get this half uploaded, and then after this heat wave cools off on Thursday, I'll get back to it and I'll finish everything up with that car. And I'll show you how I get it all set up and ready to road trip. It's going to be pretty decent.